Omaha Mom Talks, proudly sponsored by Day Ventures Swim School, where giggles and goggles unite. Hey everyone, welcome back to Omaha Mom Talks. I'm your host, Jessie Gutierrez. I'm so excited for today's episode. We are talking about something that comes up for so many moms, which is how our own childhood wounds get triggered in parenting. I'm joined today by Carly Costello. She's a mental health therapist at the Counseling Nook in West Virginia, and we are connecting today remotely. She is our first remote guest. Carly is trained in EMDR and IFS, and she helps people heal from childhood trauma so they can break those generational cycles. Have you ever found yourself parenting in a way that you swore you wouldn't? That could be your childhood wounds coming up. Today, we're talking about healing while parenting. Let's get into it. All right, Carly, welcome to Omaha Mom Talks. We're so excited to have you. You are our first remote guest. So, this is exciting for me too, because this is one of my personal goals this season. So, thank you for taking the time to connect with us from West Virginia. Tell us just a little bit about yourself.
So I have a group practice. It's a small group practice here in West Virginia. There's 3 therapists. We're all EMDR trained, and one of
Okay.
them is actually a play therapist. So she only sees kids. And then I usually see the moms. So we have a good setup here. And then I also have a consulting business, EMDR with Carly, that is for EMDR consultation for therapists.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, for those therapists that are trained in EMDR and are looking for additional consultation or certification, do you do the individual and group consultations?
Yes. So EMDR it's a whole process for therapists to actually be certified. So so I'm part of the, like, after basic training, the next step, all the consultation hours you need to be fully certified is where I'm coming in with that. And then just personally, I'm married and I'm a stepmom, and I'm also a mom to a 1.5-year-old daughter.
Awesome.
So I know all the craziness going on.
Yeah, that's a very busy age. Is she a busy girl?
Oh, yes. We're in the, like, painting with lotion or with yogurt as lotion. She thinks everything is lotion. It's all over her.
Okay, she's an expressive, curious child. That's so
Yeah,
fun.
but I am so excited that we're talking about this because that has been a big thing. Like, from the moment when I got pregnant, I contacted my EMDR therapist and was like, I want to get back into therapy because I really want to, like, regulate my nervous system because now I have this baby inside of me and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep my insides calm.
One of the things we didn't plan to talk about, but I love hearing you say, is that it is safe to do EMDR during pregnancy. A lot of people have,
Yeah,
even clinicians have this myth that EMDR is not safe during pregnancy, and we know that it is perfectly safe to do EMDR in
it
pregnancy. And in fact, you
absolutely
did it
is.
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
And,
important.
there's so much anxiety around motherhood and pregnancy and labor and everything. So, really, in my head, like, oh, that's a perfect time to do EMDR because it can give, sometimes I can give immediate relief. So, why wouldn't we want to do that?
Yes. And we know that if you have, especially if you have traumatic events that you've had in the past that are unhealed for you, baby is getting the stress hormones from the stress that you're carrying. And so that the healing that you get from EMDR, baby also gets the benefits from mom getting that healing as well.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Well, yeah. So parenthood just has this way of bringing up our unhealed stuff to surface. And so maybe that's patterns of behaviors you saw in your own parents, maybe unhealed moments or repeated events from childhood, or you may just see yourself acting out in ways that you don't prefer. We often really see ourselves in our own kids, and our childhood stuff can get projected onto our own kids. And tell me a little bit about how you can relate to that, and then also like what you see in the clients that come to you, or maybe in what they're saying in that childhood stuff coming up in parenthood.
Well, I'm always thinking of like my own parts of me that get triggered in motherhood and just in life, but in motherhood. Um, and my own parts and attachment styles. So I can even see with my daughter sometimes, like for example, the other day, took her to the doctor. I did not know it was a shot day, and it was. I got so anxious about it. Like, I was so anxious, and then when she cries and is dysregulated, like, I'm so dysregulated. So that in
Their nervous
itself is
systems are
like,
communicating.
yes, yeah, yeah. So I really do try, that's why I try so hard to regulate myself so that I'm not, like, parenting out of these different parts, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And so today we're diving into this intersection of parenting while healing. And the two modalities that we're specifically kind of going to dive into today that you've already been chatting about are EMDR and parts work. And so let's just give a little bit of context for our listeners on what each of those healing modalities are and kind of how you use them in practice. EMDR and parts work are, I feel like, talked about a lot more lately, which is great, but we want to just kind of break it down for folks. So let's start with EMDR for folks who maybe are curious about it, or maybe they're just hearing about it for the first time. Let's just both kind of break it down. But first, I just would love to hear, how were you first introduced to EMDR, or what were your first experiences, and what led you to want to get trained and certified?
So at the time, I was at a group practice and I was actually just put in a basic training, EMDR basic training, which is the first time that I heard about EMDR myself as a therapist, which is sort of wild. But so that's the first time I was really introduced. And the EMDR training is very experiential. Like there's a lot of practice pieces during the training. So you're actually practicing on one another to
Yeah.
learn.
So just for those who don't know, when you go through the EMDR training, you sit as the client and you sit as the therapist in like role plays or
EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a mouthful. But so from the basic training, honestly, I already like felt such a difference. I targeted during the basic training, I was getting very anxious at night and like terrible sleep. And I had been for a really long time. So that's what I was sort of like working on. And since that training, sleep has not been an issue. So from the moment, yeah, so from the training, I was like, believer, I'm a believer in EMDR, like it just works, you know. So and then after that, of course, I well not only was like practicing EMDR as the therapist, but then I also found my own EMDR therapist, which just yeah, helps me even more.
I love that. Yeah. I sought out EMDR training myself, and it's an investment. It is expensive. And it was like right when I got into solo practice. And I was like, I'm just going to do it for myself. This was in like 2019. And I will say, yeah, I was like immediate believer. And what really, like, I always say EMDR was my gateway drug, because I had found an EMDR consultant, Heather Ruby, who I adore to this day, and she is the one who then introduced me to parts work and dissociation and somatic experiencing. And
That's
she was just
exactly like my That's my
Really? Yeah,
experience
and it
too.
was like
Yeah,
my brain was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool, and this makes sense to me," and I just wanted to learn more, more, more. So that's why I always say EMDR was like my gateway drug because it just opened my brain up, and once I understood, EMDR, I could take on these other modalities and trainings, and so it's been
yeah,
really exciting to learn about and to be able to offer to my patients. How do you normally explain EMDR in simple terms? Like, how do you explain it to folks? What is EMDR?
yeah. It's a hard one. Um,
I
and
know.
it's taken me a long time to, like, craft how it's taken me a while to figure out how to explain it to people so that they really understand it. Because it's your eyes going back and forth or other forms of bilateral stimulation. But the way that I explain it is when we experience trauma, big or small trauma, it can get stuck, sort of like lodged and just stuck, and it doesn't move through us. But for whatever reason, it's like the bilateral stimulation helps to unlodge that trauma, get it unstuck, and then process through your brain and body. And so it can just move through, and then you're no longer as triggered as you were.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful explanation. I will just add that so EMDR is a healing modality for those that are new to learning about it that originally was created for like PTSD or combat veterans and in I believe the 80s by Francine Shapiro and then has
Yeah,
since
89.
been able to be generalized to lots of different symptoms and presenting clinical issues. And it's really just your brain's way of clearing your brain's clutter. So I always, to add to what your explanation, I always say that it is multiple phases because a lot of people hear about EMDR and they just want to go straight into like the eye movements, the processing. So it is multiple phases to help prepare your brain to be able to do that work. But yeah, it unfreezes those distressing memories. It doesn't erase them or take them away, but we want to reduce the emotional activation or the symptoms, such as like memories or dreams, nightmares, things like that, that are associated with that moment, that distressing moment.
Yeah. And also to add, not only does it help with like disturbing memories and bringing that disturbance down, but it can also help with negative beliefs about ourselves. So, like, if you have a reoccurring negative belief, like I'm not good enough, or I'm a failure, I'm a bad mom, it can help to rewire those things so that you truly
Yes.
don't feel that anymore and you don't believe that.
Yes, yes. So part of the EMDR healing is unlocking some of these negative beliefs, and through that process, leading you forward with new, healthier beliefs about yourself. Yeah, like some of those common ones are just like what I hear too, like I'm not good enough, or I'm a bad mom, or something's wrong with me. Those are a lot of the unhealthy,
Yeah.
negative beliefs that we help turn into I am a good mom, I am doing my best. I can ask for help. Like a lot of those different positive beliefs are part of the positive benefits that come from doing this work.
Yes. Absolutely.
I was going to say, so EMDR, I feel like is more talked about. There are some celebrities that we've heard about in the media that have gratefully been really saying positive things about EMDR, like Prince Harry, Miley Cyrus. I'm a Bravo fan. I watch Real Housewives. Do you watch that show? Real Housewives?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. For those that listen, Dorit was on, and they showed a live EMDR session after she was in a home invasion with her children. And so I thought it was really cool for people to see, an in vitro experience of EMDR. Do you get a lot of folks that reach out to you and like are specifically or like, I want EMDR? Or do people usually come to you and then you introduce them to EMDR as a tool that you can offer them?
Now it's probably 80% are seeking me out specifically for EMDR. It's definitely increased over the years.
Carly, how do you prepare clients for EMDR therapy?
We do a lot of resourcing or building coping skills just to make sure that when we do talk about the hard stuff, it won't be too overwhelming. And we do come and we do come up with a plan, like some goals or things that the client wants to target or focus on, areas of improvement. So we do have some goals that we know that we're working towards.
hmm for folks who maybe think that EMDR is like a little woo woo or weird, which always makes me laugh because I'm like, oh, I got a lot more woo woo in me than EMDR. Like, this is an evidence based therapy. But when people do think or say, like, whoa, that sounds a little woo woo to me, like, how do you respond to those folks?
I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." I but I'm in West Virginia where I think the majority of West Virginians thinks talk therapy is woo-woo,
Okay, okay.
so I just sort of beat them to it, and I'm like, "This is gonna sound crazy because your eyes go
Yeah.
back and forth, but I'm telling you, like, hear me out, It
Yes.
it works." I sort of squash the idea that it's hypnosis because I think that's where
hmm
people go to, like, eyes, ooh, ooh, go back and forth, like, "Are you hypnotizing me?" So I just, like, squash that, like, it's not hypnotism.
hmm
Just continue to explain it.
Yes, yes. And I do, there are therapists that are trained. I had a friend on the podcast who she is trained in hypnotherapy and EMDR and brain spotting. And so, we know that those are tools that we can use, but EMDR is not hypnosis, but I do understand why people worry about that. And then I always like I have different groups of people. Some people want to know, like especially my like type A high achieving mamas, they want to know the science of it, right? So we spend a lot of time where maybe I'm sending them some videos to look at and we're explaining it and they want to understand the why of it. And then I have a group of people who are like, "Girl, I trust you. You say it works. I'll try anything. Like let's get into it." What about you? Do you
Yeah,
also see both
same,
camps?
same, yeah. It's like, some clients, like, I need to pump the brakes, like, "Okay, well, day 1, we're not gonna, like, dive in the deep end here," But then the others,
Mhm.
yeah, like, the more type A perfectionists, I more have to, like, push us along to make sure that we don't get stuck in that, like,
In the
overthinking
thinking brain. Yeah.
process. Yeah, exactly.
Some folks want to know or hope that EMDR can erase memories. What do you say to those folks?
That's not the goal of EMDR, and EMDR doesn't erase memories. The goal is also not to, like, uncover buried memories, but it will make you feel differently. So, if you have a memory that you would love to erase, the hope is that EMDR will make you feel differently about that.
One of the coolest responses that I hear from folks, and it's always, not always, but I hear a repeated response from folks, especially with doing flash or four blinks. People will tell me, and they'll almost always do the same thing where they're like it's farther away, or it's like I can't quite access it. And as a therapist, I'm like jumping in my seat, like, yes, this is what we
I
want.
know.
We want to create that distance from that distressing thing. And it just always like
Yeah.
gives me chills because they're saying almost the same thing. And it's just so exciting for me. But it's like so wild when it's like different people who have no idea, right, of that have never done EMDR before. And then they're saying like the exact same benefits of like that distressing memory, that traumatic event. It's like so far, I can almost hardly see it anymore, or it's fragmented. And I'm like, yes.
Yes. Yeah. I explain it like instead of like being in the movie, it's like you're outside of it just watching this screen that, you're like watching it.
Yes. Yes, I like that. And then another huge question, I guess, that folks like to know about is, do I have to talk in detail about my trauma in order to do EMDR work?
No, you don't. And that's one of the great things. You don't have to talk at all. You don't have to explain the traumatic memory at all for it to work.
hmm hmm And I love being able to tell people that I don't even actually need to know or hear the details of your event if you don't want me to, in order for you to find healing from EMDR. And then are you doing EMDR virtually and in person?
Yes, I
Did
am.
you start out offering both, or was that new to you after the pandemic?
It was new after the pandemic. And I was skeptical as an EMDR therapist, like, will EMDR be as effective virtually? But I found my EMDR therapist at the start of the pandemic. I've only met her via telehealth, and it's
Okay.
been extremely effective. So that made me a believer.
When we had to move to all virtual, I was like, well, first of all, I was like, I'm going to lose my business because I had never done telehealth ever. And then I was like, how am I going to do EMDR via telehealth? Because I had never done telehealth at all. And so I was really honest with my folks and just saying, like, the research says that this can still be beneficial. It's new to me, but we're going to give it a try and, see if it's helpful for you. And I had just such great benefits and great results in my patients, and so that made me feel more confident over time that, like, "Yep, I can do this and offer this virtually, and it works."
Yeah, I know. I guess that's one of the like one little silver lining of the pandemic is it made it therapy so accessible with virtual and like the norm, really.
Yes, especially for our folks who maybe are living in rural areas that don't have access to care,
Hmm.
can get connected virtually. Hey, friends, this is Jessie. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a big thank you to our season 2 sponsor, Diventures Swim School. My kids started weekly swim lessons at Diventures back in February 2025, and honestly, I've been blown away by the growth that I've seen in just a few months. As a water loving family, water safety is super important to us, and Diventures has given me such peace of mind as a parent. I'm going to share with you just a few of the things that I love the most about Diventures. They offer classes for all ages and stages, starting as young as 2 months all the way up to adults. They have small class sizes with just 4 kids max to 1 adult, so they really do get a lot of that one-on-one support. They have a heated pool, so no battles over getting into cold water. They have flexible class times, which allow for rescheduling when life gets busy or you're going to be out of town. And of course, expert instructors, all certified and truly just amazing with kids. If swim lessons has been on your list, this is your sign. Head on over to diventures.com and find a class that's right for your family. Now, let's shift our conversation into parts work because I know this is something that you enjoy weaving into EMDR and it's something I love using too. And just for our audience, I just want to say you may have heard of terms like parts work, inner child healing, IFS, DNMS, ego states, right? There's a lot of different terms that mean a lot of different things. And these are all different ways that can help people connect with those inner child parts or protective parts in really compassionate ways. We want to understand our parts, how they feel and work, and how we can begin to care for them and unburden them. So, Carly and I are each trained in different healing modalities that provide parts work. So, we're going to each kind of chat a little bit about what those are and how we use them. So, Carly, share with us a little bit about what you are trained in and what it is, what it means, and how you use it.
So IFS is internal family systems. It's really hard to get into the IFS Institute, the like actual big training. And I have not gotten into that yet, but
Okay.
I've taken pretty much every other training possible.
Uh
So
huh.
I've taken a lot of trainings with Kindle Heart, which is like blending IFS and EMDR. I've done the IFS circle through the Institute. And so I've just had like a lot of extra trainings that I've done implementing IFS and parts work. And I always explain to people from the Inside Out movie. So if you've seen Inside Out, that movie with all the little characters that are in the girl's brain, that's
Yeah,
IFS.
Riley.
Yeah, Riley, that's her name. Yeah, so that is IFS, essentially that we are all made up of different parts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm similar to you where I've taken some advanced EMDR trainings on integrating IFS into EMDR practice. And then I also trained in
Uh-huh.
ego states therapy by Robin Shapiro and the developmental needs meeting strategy, DNMS. And so all of those are parts work trainings that I've used. And I just often explain to people similar to you, which is that we all have parts. We all have in DNMS, so it stands for developmental needs meeting strategy. We talk a lot about unmet developmental needs. So, from birth, we are all wired for connection and have emotional developmental needs. And sometimes when those go unmet in childhood, it can cause what I call a childhood wound or a developmental wound. And so a lot of times when I'm meeting with people, they might say, like, I had a pretty good childhood. And so then we'll look at some of those developmental needs. So that could be like feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling seen, important, feeling like my feelings are important to my caregivers, right? A lot of folks that I see have had caregivers that are saying, or that their childhood, they were told, like, if you're going to cry, go to your room. I don't want to hear you. So they didn't get necessarily soothed or weren't given a caregiver that held space for their big feelings. And then a lot of folks that I see weren't given unconditional love. They were given love if I behave well, or if I act well, or if I do these things, then I receive love. And so it's not always about like the big, horrible, awful things that happen to you. Sometimes it's about the things that went unmet or unnoticed. And when that happens, a part of you may form around that unmet need. And later, those parts may show up in adulthood in things like people pleasing, self doubt, relying on others, or even like explosive anger.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I know IFS is a little bit different because there's all these labels of like protectors, managers, exiles. But can you tell us a little bit about self and self energy? Because that always just like speaks to my soul. And I feel like so many people relate to self energy when I explain it to them.
Yeah. The way I explain self energy is just like our truest self. And when you feel like grounded and complete, and that's our goal, is to be in our self energy throughout our day.
So I used to, I guess I kind of have changed it, but what I always try and say is our self energy is something that exists in all of us and you're born with it because a lot of people think it's something that you've created along the way. And so I try to let them know, like, nope, it's existed and kind of evolved inside of you always. But that is your most calmest, wisest, most regulated, most nurturing part of you. And it's not realistic that we're going to operate from our self energy all the time, especially as moms, because the demands are high, the triggers are high, the emotions are high. But we want to learn how to lean into that self energy and really access it when we need it, right? And be able to try and like with anything else, the more we use it, the easier it gets. But learning about it and leaning into it is super important. And then as far as our parts that um, are maybe, so I know for myself, I've done parts work as the client, and I have this like feisty teenage younger part. And she is my girl that she's quick with the comebacks. She'll never get backed into a corner. And she is like roar. That is one of my parts. And before I did my parts work, like I hated her. Like, my adult self was like, I don't like her. I don't prefer to act like that. I don't like to talk like that. I don't like to pop off and get mouthy to people, especially like my partner who I love and adore. And so in my parts work, I had to learn to actually connect with that part and hold compassion for her. And that was really hard for me to do and to wrap my head around. And so, can you talk with us a little bit about how we're not trying to get rid of our parts?
Yeah. We're really trying to be curious and compassionate towards our parts and get to know them more. And the idea is that by getting to know them more and understanding them more and listening to them more and like listening to their story, that it helps heal them, like heals this like angry rebel teenager
Yeah.
inside of us. So then they don't have to be so angry anymore, you know?
How do you know, or how might someone know, like a listener, how might someone know if they could benefit from parts work healing?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, simple answer, I think everyone could.
Yeah,
But
same.
if like, I guess just understanding, like, if you're a perfectionist, you might think that's just who you are. Like, I'm just
Hmm.
a type A person and I'm a perfectionist. No, that's a part of you that you're so blended
Hmm.
with, you think that's you. But so that, if you feel like resentment building a lot, or
Hmm.
if you're even overly a caretaker, like to the extreme, putting other people's needs before your own, people pleaser, all these things that we might think like this is just my personality.
Right.
Those are actually parts that if you're open to it and open to be like curious about, they could use some healing.
Yes. I often tell people, and I agree with you, I think everyone can benefit from parts work. I'll often, if you've ever been in or witnessed a road rage incident, I'm like, whoa, they've got some big parts getting activated there today. But I often tell people if you are have a situation where you're like overly reactive in your opinion about yourself, so not an external opinion. In certain situations, this might be a part of you that's coming to surface and kind of coming to play and coming to protect you. So I often use the example since I work a lot with moms is that if you have a conflict with your partner and you have a really big reaction and later on maybe you're feeling guilty about that reaction or you feel like, that response is not the way I prefer to speak to my partner. That's often a younger part of self that's wounded, that's getting activated. And so that part might need a little bit of attention that we can do in therapy to connect with that part, find out what maybe unmet needs that part has, and what kind of support and love and nurturing that part needs to be able to settle into your system, not to go away, not to be left alone, but because those parts exist inside you always.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was thinking to myself like postpartum journey has
Mhm.
been like I've really noticed my parts getting activated. And this time more than ever is a time that like I would need IFS therapy or I could benefit from parts work.
Yes, it's such an important time because, like we were saying earlier, parenthood and especially parenting young children has a way of activating our childhood stuff that maybe we thought we stuffed down well enough or we, forgot about. But then this new season of life just has a way of bringing all of that stuff to surface. And you get to decide if you want to give it some attention and if you want to give it some healing, and if you don't, that's up to you. But we definitely see the benefits of that work, and EMDR and parts work just blend so beautifully together. So, for folks who haven't done like this work, can you talk with us, like with parts work, just a little bit about what they could expect or what that might look like, how you kind of ground them and invite them to take a look inside?
So, well, we sort of first start by like finding a part that they want to get in touch with and that they're maybe a little curious about. So I would invite them to turn inside and maybe like find a part, whether it be like a feeling or a physical sensation that they're curious
Uh huh.
about in their body, like tightness in my chest. Okay, let's sit with that tightness in your chest and like what more do you notice about it? Do any feeling words go along with this? Like nervous, scared. Okay, this nervous and scared. Do you know what this part is scared about? Someone's mad at me. Do you know when this part like first had this feeling? Like when were they first scared that someone might be mad at them? Or like how long has this part been around? This like tightness in your chest for as long as I can remember. So it's been around a long time. So these are sort of the questions that we start to go on
Hmm.
to really get to know this part. For me, we're really trying to get to know a part and get to know its fears and how is it protecting you or how's it protecting other parts. So like with this tightness in my chest part, and I'm worried that people are mad at me, it's protecting this fear that I'm not loved. So we're trying to get down to that. And then that's when I start to use EMDR to heal that original wound that I'm unloved or I'm unlovable.
Yeah. And I think that brings a good, my brain came up with um, sometimes in EMDR, it's not always a specific like moment. Like it's not like a car wreck that I was in or a house fire. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And so, especially with like what you just described, we're kind of working in a different way to get to what the target is or what the negative belief is. And so you can still find benefit from EMDR without it being like this exact moment in time is what I want to target. And part of the work then with these parts is we want to essentially bring them up to speed, these stuck parts. They're stuck in a time of whenever the hurt happened or whenever. So I always say like these are immature or stunted parts often. So like my feisty senorita part, she is 15 and she also has a 15-year-old brain, right? And so I'm much older now. And so I want to bring her up to speed on where we are at now, give her that awareness of today and update her on what we know today and let her know like there are going to be times where like I really need you and you're going to use your strengths. And there's going to be situations where you feel activated and you feel like you want to come up to surface and lead. But I'm going to actually ask you to sit back in those moments because we're going to let present day Jessie, who has that self energy, who has more wisdom and more calm and more years experience to handle that situation. We want you to just sit
Right.
back and be 15.
Right. And it takes time because there's other parts that are going to be like Jesse is not ready for this. Like
One of the other healing modalities that I did that I am not trained in, but I love, and I'm curious if you have any experience with it, is safe and sound protocol.
I don't, but I've been hearing a lot more about it.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of being a participant. So my EMDR consultant got trained in it, and then she offered a small group for other therapists to do. And so, and we did it virtually. And so, it for those who don't know, Safe and Sound Protocol is a listening therapy that has very specific music with different, notes and things that activate your brain that you listen to and then you process kind of after. And I had a whole, and it was several weeks, but I had a like such a healing moment with my inner child and my adult self that just naturally, like organically happened during Safe and Sound protocol. And that was so healing for me. It was really cool. Yeah, really, really cool. And it's something I looked into getting trained in. I would say, like, if you're a solo therapist in private practice, the cost of having access to the music is a little high, but maybe for like group practices or somebody who has an employer that's willing to pay it, it's definitely worth looking into. But yeah, I will also add that my husband has done his own parts work therapy, and he has given me permission to share. So a while back, he had, and he's not a feelings person. He didn't grow up, expressing his feelings or acknowledging other people's feelings. And so being married to a therapist has been really fun for him. And a while back, he had said he was interested in going to therapy and asked me if I could help him find a therapist, which was that's always a really big responsibility when someone's never been to therapy. You want to get them like the perfect match so that they buy into
Totally.
therapy and they don't feel,
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
you get one shot
And
here.
yes, that's how it felt. And I was like, well, I know I want him to have an EMDR and parts work therapist, and someone that I don't have a personal relationship, which is really tricky. Omaha isn't that big of a city. And so I gave him like a list of 4 folks and said, you get to, you look them all out, see who you vibe with. And that way I wasn't micromanaging the whole process.
Yeah.
And he's been
Yeah,
doing parts work, and it's been a game changer just for our relationship in the way that we
that's so
communicate with each other. And also makes me like, hot for him even more because he's talking my talk. He's like, okay, there's a part of me right
right,
now
yeah.
that's getting really triggered and wants to be really defensive. And I'm like, okay, look at you.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
if you can, ladies, get your partners in parts work therapy too, because it has really been helpful for our relationship.
yeah, I can only imagine. I'm trying.
Yeah, and I get it. And I always say like you can't force someone to go to therapy or they're really not going to get the benefit that they need from it. So like all you can do is plant the seeds and talk about the benefits.
That's
And
right.
and I do say if anyone's listening and thinking like, how do I get my partner in therapy? I always say like you think about what your goals are as a couple, and if you guys have the same goals, you're going to get there faster if you're both working on your healing journey, and sometimes that can help folks kind of see how that can get there to the end goal, but I get it. It's hard.
It is.
In terms of your clients, what do you see as some of the biggest benefits that they're seeing through EMDR and parts work, especially for parents or moms?
Honestly, just like how they function in their day to day is like with more ease and lightness. And like I'll have some people come back and they're like, oh my God, it was Father's Day and we had this huge family dinner, and which usually would be very triggering. And they're like, it was fine. Like, I thought about it afterwards and it was okay. And they're almost like, that's weird. So it's just little things like that. Like they
Uh-huh.
just
Yeah,
notice
I love
after the
those
fact.
moments where they like maybe anticipated like, oh, I know and then they're like, Jesse, like I was fine.
Yeah. Or if you do have like an anxious attachment with your partner, like that can be healed. So like when my husband is grumpy or annoyed at something, and where in the past I would usually like be anxious and wanting to fix it, I'm like, you can do you and I'm going to keep going with my day.
Yes. Isn't that so freeing too to get to that point? Because I used to be that too. Like, what did I do wrong? Are you mad? Like, are you mad? And he's like, if you ask me if I'm mad one more time, I'm like, okay, I got
Right.
something I need to work on. With parts, I'm wondering, do people think that it's woo woo when you tell them about it? Do you give them an explanation or do you dive right in it? Or what's kind of your method there?
I've learned to just dive right in because I don't want either of us to get stuck in the over explaining part. I
Yeah.
used to over explain, but then I would almost work myself up into like my insecure part that didn't feel like qualified to do this or something, you know? So I just dive in because I trust the process and I've seen the benefits. So I just trust the process and I know it can be so powerful.
Yes.
And of course, these clients I'm working with, like we have a good relationship, so we can do that, you
Yes.
know?
Yes, I'm with you. For my like existing, clients, sometimes they'll come in with something unexpected, and I'll be like, "I'm gonna need you to trust me on this one. I need you to take a couple
Yeah,
deep breaths, look inside, and we just go with it." And they are good. The other thing that I love is like parts work. Just for the majority of everyone that I work with, they just get it. Like it just resonates with them. Do you have that same experience
yeah,
with your patients?
yes, definitely.
And
Um,
I think that is like one of the coolest things.
I was just thinking of 2 books if, like, you are interested about learning more about IFS and parts. No Bad Parts, that book, but it's a little bit more, like, clinical, like, understanding what IFS is. But then I love
Yes.
the book Listening When Parts Speak.
Okay, I haven't read that one yet.
You haven't? It is beautiful, and it has so many guided meditations that are so powerful
Okay.
and good. So, I mean, I recommend for therapists or just for anybody, like, to read it, but that book can, like, actually give you a taste of
Okay.
what IFS therapy would be like and just how powerful it can be.
Yeah. Okay. We'll add those to the show notes as well so people can check out those two books. I'll say for therapists, the one of the first books that I read was Easy Ego State Interventions. And it also gives a lot of great guided meditations and like very applicable if you're new to parts work. So you can start using it, fairly soon. So I really liked that book. Well, Carly, is there anything else you'd like to share about EMDR or parts work or blending the two for our listeners today?
Just that I hope this conversation, it gives people a little more understanding of what it is and that EMDR doesn't seem too intimidating or complicated. Like my whole goal with my EMDR with Carly business is one, I want to explain EMDR in a way that people get it and that people feel comfortable seeking it out. Like, oh, wait, maybe that could help me, you know? And then two, for EMDR therapists to help give them confidence so that they actually grow in their EMDR practice and use it just because I know how powerful it can be. So I want more like good EMDR therapists out there so that more people can experience the power of it.
I agree. It is something that I think that everyone should have access to if they're interested. And I think that like when folks come to me and they find healing through EMDR or parts work, they're always so grateful, of course. But I'm like, I'm literally just sharing, right? Like my education and my training, and I'm so grateful to be able to do that. And I'm always just excited as them, and I'm just as when people come in and have had a breakthrough. I don't know we're going to get there either, or when, or how fast, or how slow. And so I'm on the journey with them, and I'm equally as excited.
Yeah. And then if you are interested in finding a therapist in either of these modalities, I recommend looking on the MDRIA website, mdria.org. You can search for a therapist in your area or in your state. And then the same with IFS, the IFS Institute. Also, you can search for an IFS therapist in your area.
Perfect. Perfect. And Carly, for those that want to connect with you or learn more about your offerings, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram, EMDR with Carly, and then my website as well is emdrwithcarly.com. So I'd love to connect.
Perfect. Yes. Well, thank you, Carly, so much for taking the time to connect with us and for sharing all your warmth and wisdom.
Thank you. This was great.
And to those of you that are listening, if this episode spoke to you, please share with another mom who might need it and keep taking good care of yourselves. We'll see you next time on Omaha Mom Talks.
Omaha Mom Talks. Real moms, authentic conversations, no filter needed.